Good morning. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining. Good morning. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for the one joining. This morning you wake up with a surprise. You were waiting for Natalia and you find me. Okay, I hope it will be a good surprise or at least a neutral one. Welcome to everyone. Good morning. Okay, let's give just some few minutes to people to join. Can you please guys confirm that you can see my screen? Good morning. So we knew it was you. And even if you know it was me, you came. So that's good. Okay. So as I was saying, can you please confirm me that you can see the screen? Yes, super. Can you hear me well? Yeah, super. Thank you. So while we wait for the other joining, could you please kindly, if that's fine with you, share the name, your name, the name of institution and your country so that we see who is in the room. Thanks a lot. Okay, so we see we have quite a diversified audience, people from many places. So I just read it through. So from Luxembourg, Philippines, Nigeria, Ghana, Jordan, Kenya, so Bangladesh, Albania, Uganda, the Netherlands, Uganda. Voila, so looks there are quite some diversities. Geneva. Super. So while you keep on writing, while still people are joining, could you also please kindly let me know if anyone among you did not participate to the previous or the one before the previous training, just to have an idea of who is in the room so that we can adapt accordingly. So is there anyone for which today is the first training of this series? So normally we had other two, one on strategy and one on identification of risk and opportunity. Is for anyone this the first training? Okay, well, someone is the first training. Okay, someone attend to session. Please go ahead and give us some feedback. Iraq. Okay, well, great. Welcome. Attend to session. Yeah, please take a moment to write down so I have an idea. I have an idea of who is in the audience. Okay. Super. Okay, so it seems that for at least for the people answering, that's the majority attend the two sessions. Some attend one session, and just so one person that is attending for the first time the first session. So that it means that so far I can rather go through the key content of the session and just point to maybe a couple of reminder. For the person that it seems there is just one person that attended that for whom is the first session, I will recommend to go back. You will see there are the videos of the first and the second session online, or you can ask to the email of the action group to Ligia to share with you these videos as well as the material. I will state some words, but because there is just one person, I will not, let's say, go through the full details of the generic part of this presentation. Okay, so I would believe that we are it, and we can start. Okay, so let me then start. So we have like 1 hour, 20 minutes to spend together, and it's my great pleasure to be here with you. Let me then go through. So last time you got a session on identification of risk and opportunity. I think I don't want to stress it too much, but that section is key. And many times that topic is somehow overseen because we very much want to run, and we want to actually do things. Yeah, we want to develop green products, and we will look into that in the next section, or we want to actually manage our risk, or we want to design a strategy. And so sometimes the topic of identification of risk and opportunities is overseen. But to be straight, that's an error, because the identification is the key of everything. Because if you do not identify correctly your risk and your opportunity, then your management will not be tailored to your needs, as well as your product and service will not, and your overall strategy could be weaker. So that means that section is key. If you have any doubt on that, you please let me know. We can take a pause on the question and answer, because today we speak about managing the environmental risk and opportunity. And of course, to be able to manage them correctly, first of all, you should have identified them correctly, because you will not be able to manage what you don't identify. And again, it seems trivial what I'm saying, but majority of weakness of this transition toward green finance goes into the point that I'm designing a product for which I did not correctly identify the demand and needs and my opportunity, or I'm managing a certain risk without having clear what are the risk, vulnerability, and impacts of my clients. Yeah? And that should not happen. So again, without stressing too much, will be key that you go through and relook into the identification. And today we speak about managing environmental risk and opportunity. So as you know, this is part of a session of training that delivered to you by the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group. The material has been designed by Natalia and myself for the action group, and of course, in collaboration and support with the full members of the action group, as well as with the European Microfinance Platform that is hosting the action group. So, you're part of a session of trainings. You are at the third session. If you forgot to register to the fourth session, and if you're interested in green product, please go ahead. And just to let you know, as you know, there are sessions also in Spanish and English, so we're part of an overall work of training of the sector. What do we try to do today? What are our key objectives of today? But today we would like to finish the session with the following objective. First of all, gain an initial understanding of the standard 2, managing environmental risk and opportunity of the Green Industry 3.0 and related best practices. And then second, develop the basis to assess, sorry, hold on, I had a problem for reading. Okay, develop the basis to assess the status of the participant institution in relation to the standard 2. If you will need to assess yourself if you are a financial institution, or you want to use the Green Index to assess the capacity to manage risk and opportunity in environment of a financial institution, what you should do, and what are the key things you need to look into to identify the gap. Before moving forward, while I present the rest of this next slide, can you people please write down what is your status? Are you a microfinance institution? Are you an investor? Are you a consultant? Are you an academic? So that I see a bit who is in the audience, so they can put some remark on how to use this session for your various needs. Okay, here is in the meantime, this is our agenda. So we have an introduction of green inclusive finance and the Green 3.0. I will do that very fast. We'll take it like 5 minutes or so, because every one of you basically looked through the previous 2 sessions, and then we will spend quite some time on the session 2. So let's say the center of the training, so managing environmental risk and opportunity with the good practices. And then we look into the actual standard number 2 of the GNS 3.0 and see what is the detailed content, so that you can then have the information and the knowledge on how to fill it. Eventually, we also invite you to fill this standard 2. As you remember from the previous session, everyone that is going to participate and so that's going to fill the 4 standard. So every time at the end of the second part of the training, you have the access to the link. In this link, you can fill the information of your own institution, of institution that is your partner. If you do for the 4th session, then we will give back to you. Actually, either we will send back to you your actual scoring and eventually your scoring compared to the benchmark of the various participants to the training. So this probably is pretty interesting to you. So please kindly make sure that you fill your standard so that we can receive it and we can use this information. Okay, so let's move forward. I see there is a mix in the audience: microfinance network, consultant, microfinance institution, social investor, group of MFIs. Okay, consulting. Okay, super. Okay, quickly on that. So as said, this training is offered to you to the Green Inclusive Economics Financial Action Group. Just to let you know, and probably very much know, this is the oldest action group in the European Microfinance Platform, founded 2013, with more than 150 members and 75 institutions affiliated too. The key thing, there are quite some objectives. I don't want to bother you with that. You already heard probably 2 times or so. But one of the key missions we have that clearly are very important for the training we are doing. One is develop dedicated tools. That is, for example, the Greenness 3.0. And then, of course, publicize and disseminate the funding with these tools. And, of course, training and building capacity into the sector. So maybe we reached to this point, but I don't think we basically stated what green inclusive finance is in a formal way. So in a formal way, green inclusive finance, as you probably know, does not have an agreed definition into the sector. In the action group, since already long, more than 10 years ago, we started grabbing together ideas, experience from various partners to come, with a pragmatic definition. And we came up with this definition. So the green inclusive finance consists in risk management processes, what we're going to discuss today, financial product and non-financial services as part of a financial offer that are embedded into an overall strategy and monitoring system enabled by policy and regulation that support economic opportunity. Economic opportunity is key, so it should generate a decrease in cost for the user and or an increase in revenue and or a stability of revenue. Or voila, needs of household. So it could also be something that fulfill not a business purposes, but it also would be a needs for a household. Imagine I need lights in the evening, or could also be for micro, small, and medium enterprise. So you see, we get up to medium-sized enterprise. The key thing is partially excluded by the standard banking sector. So if you are included by the standard banking sector, that will not be inclusive finance, just because you're already included. And the way in which that needs to happen should be in a clean, resilient, and sustainable manner. Means clean, of course, clean for the planet. Resilience means you decrease the vulnerability you have to eventual environmental risk. And sustainable, it means that need to be at once socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable. That's a bit the definition. I will invite you to read it through various times and to think about that. But pragmatically, as you already heard from Natalia, that has to do with 3 key concepts that probably already learned them quite extensively, but are key nowadays when we speak about the management of risk and opportunity, because what you want to do, you want to manage the risk and opportunity around these 3 key concepts. So concept number 1 is vulnerability. So how the clients and institutions are affected by the environment. Like I have a drought, my clients are losing their production, or there is decrease in accessibility to electricity and energy. Then my branches don't have it, so they're affected. So this topic of vulnerability is key in the context of financial inclusion, because of course, one of the things you would like to do in green inclusive finance is to keep on delivering financial and non-financial services to the population that are more in needs. And this population, of course, are among the most vulnerable one. And so once you identified in the previous session what are the key vulnerability, now here you want to manage this vulnerability. And we need to understand how does it means to manage them. And of course, manage is to understand what they are, prioritize them, analyze them, and then find a way to reduce this vulnerability. The other topic in terms of risk, of course, is adverse impact. So adverse impact is all the activity the client institution could have that can affect the environment: cutting trees, greenhouse gas emission, polluting rivers, use or sustainable use of paper, water, etc. And that's, of course, potential impact that the institution or the client may have. And when you discuss about managing them, again, you want to identify them, then you want to analyze them, then you want to find a way and processes to reduce, this impact, etc., etc. We will see in a moment. And of course, the economic opportunity, that is to understand what is the possible increase of revenue, stabilization of revenue, or decrease of cost that your client institution may have if you will invest into green practices and activities. So the green inclusive finance is nothing else, the interaction among these three key concepts that as probably you learned so far, you can find them all along through the Green Index 3.0, and we will find them again in the specific standard. One minor thing in terms of reminder, we have these two concepts in terms of direct and indirect. You already heard various times. It will be important in the specific section as well, because when we speak about managing risk and managing opportunities, you need to define to manage them for whom. Yeah, and there is an important part, and the majority of all things that can impact the environment will make your institution vulnerable that come from your client. That's what we call indirect. Yeah, and then a small part, but key, because clearly generate capacity, image, reputation, etc. That is what happened within your own institution. And when we aim to manage the risk and opportunities, and then we need to define clearly what is the realm of applicability. Yeah, the direct, so I'm managing the risk and opportunity I have into my company, or I'm managing the risk and opportunity of the clients. I would like to stress one key thing. When we speak about managing, let me focus a second into the risk. There could be really, let's say, a threat in financial inclusion if we do not manage these things correctly. Let me explain what I aim to say. For example, we speak about vulnerability. Naturally, the client of microfinance institution will be among the most vulnerable one. And unfortunately, this vulnerability will be key in the future, because climate change, biodiversity degradation, etc., will eat it into your client base more and more. So that means that one of the ways you may have the tendency to react to is to define value chain, activities, region, type of clients that eventually will be too vulnerable or will become too risky. Yeah, and of course you can try and then define. I would like to decrease my risk to environmental degradation, etc., by managing my portfolio. So say, okay, not too much into this region, not too much into this value chain, etc., etc. And if this thing is not done carefully, it could generate exclusion. Yeah, so that it means that you are managing your environmental risk by excluding the most vulnerable population. This clearly is what should not happen. Yeah, I repeat, this is what should not, with negative, happen. Why? Because part of the key mission a financial institution has, an inclusive financial institution has, is to include the people that are excluded. And the climate change will tend to exclude it more and more. So it means what? But it means that we need to very much focus into managing the indirect risk and actually to manage the risk of our clients. That is key. They should find a compromise between managing the risk of the portfolio of the institution, yeah, and the risk of the client. So if the clients start implementing better practices, if he start analyzing his own practices, if they are more or less vulnerable to climate change, etc., what will happen is that will become less vulnerable, and then your portfolio will become less vulnerable as well. And then with this strategy, you will achieve two objectives. One is to decrease your own risk. On the other side is to decrease the risk of your client and then increase social inclusion. Well, if instead you focus on just decrease your own risk, there is the clear trade-off that the simplest solution is to exclude the most vulnerable one, and then you will not solve the problem because you mission drift out of supporting the most vulnerable one. So we will come back onto this concept because I think it's key for management of risk. Any question on what I just explained now that I think is key on the dimension of risk management? Do you have any question, any feedback? Is all good? Okay. If someone have a question, please point it out in the chat, or you can raise your hands and we can give you the word. As said, this you already know, this you already heard from Natalia. So let me get through. So green index, the other important thing is that it's been started in 2014. We are at the third version, and it is beyond just assessing financial institution. It's also, a training tool, and is also a tool to monitor progresses and to plan and prioritize. It is aligned with the Dimension 7, as you heard various times. So the Dimension 7 has been co-designed and co-developed by three parties: Ceres, SPTF, and the Green Inclusion and Climate Smart Finance Action Group. And of course, it is in full alignment with the Green 3.0. The Green 3.0 provide like a more in-depth assessment. That it means that if you do a Green 3.0, you already done a Dimension 7. If you do Dimension 7, you have a first information to then do a Green 3.0. In terms of mapping between the standard, this I'm not sure you already seen it, but maybe some of you have seen. You see the Green Index as 4 standard, the Dimension 7 as 3 standard, and beyond having less detail, the Dimension 7 compared to the Green Index per each standard, so less question, and is not done in terms of multiple choice for each one of the questions. The other differences is that the standard 1 and 2 of the Green Index are put together and into the dimension, the standard 7B of the Dimension 7. So that means in that case, it's called identification and management of environmental risk and opportunity, while for us, these two topics are divided. First you have identification, standard 1, then you have the management. Okay, this we know. We are now focusing to the standard 2. So if you compare the standard 1 to the standard 2, let's have a quick look. So let's focus on the first essential practices. Is the standard 1, we have identification of indirect risk and opportunity, identification of the risk and opportunity of your own clients. And this, as you see here, it is done along the three dimension I just explained. So vulnerability, negative environmental impact, and demand and needs. And then we go to the standard 2. In standard 2, you see the title of the first essential practice is management of indirect risk and opportunity. So here is where you manage the risk and opportunity that you have been identified in the first essential practices of the first standard. Now, what is important is that you need to manage all the three dimensions, so vulnerability, negative environmental impact, demand, and needs. We will see that in a while. But the second that I think is very important to explain from the very beginning is what does it mean managing. First things is that you may have identified certain vulnerability and impact of your clients if you think about risk, but eventually these do not translate directly into a financial risk of your own institution, or a reputational risk of your own institution, or a social risk of your own institution, or they do. So the key thing is which one of the vulnerability and negative environmental impact and demand and needs, and to which extent they really become a financial and non-financial risk of your institution. What does it mean becoming a financial and non-financial risk of your institution? Is do you identify them as risk within your own processes, with your own policy, or do you identify them as really actual opportunities and demand within your own segmentation of client? Sorry. So this is really the part where you start translating what you identified in things that can really be material for your own institution. This thing is key because many times we just see institution that has a good identification, for example, of the environmental impacts that have their clients on the environment, of course, but because this identification is not translated into the risk processes, into the policy, etc., they just remain an identification. And then when the institution, need to manage their own risk, various risk, operational risk, credit risk, reputational risk, etc., if the environmental climate risk are not included into these processes, they will just not be included or will not be overseen, or will just become of secondary importance. So the key point here into the management is how do you identify, do you include these new vulnerability and impacts of your client into your standard processes and policy in terms of risk management, as well, if you speak about opportunity, in terms of defining and deploying a product and service that can fulfill actually identify demand and needs. Seem trivial, but this is one of the most key passage you would like to aim to do if you want to go in the green inclusive finance. So first of all, you identify environmental risk and opportunity. Then you need to make sure that that is translated into your standard credit operation and risk processes. And that's what happened in the standard 2. So in the standard 2 is where we assess if an institution is able to do this translation and is able to do this translation at the level of essential practice 1 means to your client, essential practice 2 means of their own institution. And we don't only stop there, then we also look into, we will see in a second, we look into how that is done, yeah, to which extent, what are the implications, etc. Okay, so you know that when we fill out the Green Index 3.0, you will receive a score from 0 to 100%. And if you will do, for example, for the present standard that we are discussing about, you will get a score from 0 to 100% to the standard 2, so the one on the bottom of this plot. Maybe 2 words again that probably has not been explained so far in the previous session in terms of structure of the Green Index 3.0. The Green Index 3.0 is composed of 3 key concepts beyond the dimension I just explained. One is called enabler, one is called outreach, and one is called details. So what do we mean by that? So if I ask you, or if we look into the financial institution and we say, look, please tell me if you identify the vulnerability to climate change of your client. Yeah, and then you can say, yes, I do it. Okay, super. And I do for this, and that, for example, to droughts, floods, etc. The Green Index 3.0 is done in such a way that when you say a yes, then there are these 3 things that kick in. One is what we call enablers. Enabler means, okay, you say you do it, but how do you do it? Yeah, and there are 2 things that typically are checked. One is capacity, means do you have the capacity to do what you claim you do because you got your staff trained, or because you have a partnership with a provider or with the technologies that is actually expert in doing what you aim to. For example, you have been trained to identify the climate vulnerability, or you're working with a provider that's very much know or has technology to identify where a risk can be verified and how much of the asset of your client could eventually be impacted. Then you have tools. Yeah, so if you say not only capacity, okay, you say you have capacity, you work with someone, but with which tool do you do it? When I ask, for example, assessing, the climate risk of a client, how do you actually do it? So do you have, for example, a questionnaire that you ask your client to fill? Do you have a technology that run an algorithm in terms of the sectors and in terms of the kind of activity your client and generate a score? How do you do it? And then these 2 are key because are called enabler. If you will ever do an assessment of a financial institution, your own financial institution or of a partner financial institution, is key to understand this capacity and tools, because it's actually the one that will give you a proxy of the actual positive or almost positive results of your practices. And then third, what is called outreach. Outreach, I think, is key. I think Natalia told you that since the Green Index 3.0, sorry, since the second version of the Green Index, and then even more important, in the third version, we included quantitative indicator. Quantitative indicator give us a proxy of the outreach, because of course you may have an institution that has, I don't know, 5 green scope into their lending. So we finance solar panel, we finance sustainable agriculture, recycling, circular economy, they finance smart mobility, etc. But then the question is, how much is the outreach of what we do? So maybe we have one with 5 green objective into their lending, but with an outreach complexity of 100 clients and 100,000 euro. And then maybe you have another one that instead has one focus, let's say energy efficiency, but this is covering 3,000 clients and 3 million of portfolio. And you want to be able to distinguish between the 2. So the quantitative indicator are attached to many qualitative indicators. For example, do you have green product? Yes. Okay. How many you disbursed in the last year? That give you a proxy of how good has been the implementation of these activities, thanks to the capacity and tools just described, to achieve a certain outreach to their clients. So this is important if you do an assessment, because it's what will generate the soundness of your analysis. Then 2 words here on this concept that probably you have not looked into that yet. So the GRINS 3.0 is built on a model of improvement. You plan, so that means with a strategy and identification, you make a plan. So you say what you would like to be at certain point in 1 year or 3 years time. You identify what are the key vulnerability, impact, opportunity, and so you're making a plan of your green inclusive transition. Then you do, yeah. These are actually where we start being today. So we are in the do. So you now manage what you identify. You develop product and services according to your plan, yeah. And then you check. What were the results. I remind you that the monitoring and report is part of the first, the 0 standard, so the essential practice in 2, yeah, where you monitoring and report what has been your achievement, yeah. And when you monitor and report, then you need to have the internal process and responsibility, again, part of the actual implementation of the strategy that will allow you to rethink what you actually, have been implemented, and if that's has fulfilled the objective in point 1. This, I think, is important. Everyone that would like to use the GRINS 3.0 as a tool to improve, because I think it's one of the most important use we would like to, to push for this tool, is that you can use it as a tool to plan within the standard 1 and 2, essential practice 1 and essential practice 1 and 2 identification. You plan what to do. You start doing it with these 2 standards, and then the standard 3, 2 and 3. And then you go into check and monitoring. So you monitor and report what was the achievement. So essential practice 2 of the standard 1. And then you need to have your internal process that allow to, okay, what did I learn? What can I do better? And then you restart. You replan, you adapt your strategy, you adapt your verification process and methodology, and then you do what you are supposed to do in an adapted way, and you keep on doing it. Yeah, the learning path, the learning curve is key to move forward into green transition. Okay, questions so far. And now let's get into the management. Stop a second. Do you have questions? Please raise your hand. You can take the microphone as well. I see no hands. I see no questions. So I will interpret it.
There is one, Davide. Yeah.
Sorry?
I think it was, well, there was a hand there. Okay, from Usman. Okay, I give him the word.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Davide. So I was just a bit confused. Now, looking at the different indexes, right? So, for example, you start by defining, right? Defining what green means to you as an institution, and then you identify, then you manage, right? Am I correct?
Yes.
So I'm wondering, I mean, should this happen as a linear process, or should it be, is it something that, because I mean, when you're talking about it, I'm thinking I perhaps need to identify it and manage it, and perhaps before defining what it is, I need to know what it is before I can talk about identifying it and managing it, rather. But when you say defining, shouldn't defining come like as at a later stage? Is just the confusion. Should it be something that happens through a linear process, or does it depend on how the institution wants to use it?
Thank you. So first of all, thanks for the question. So first of all, as you see, it's non-linear, so it's circular. So see here below, sorry. Plan, do, check, act, and you keep on, moving in circular, or we try to translate that also with this arrow that go out from the right and come back to the left. So it's a circular project. And where do you start? There are 2 ways to normally do it. One is more pragmatic and bottom up, and one is more normative. So the more normative one, you start from the beginning and you start saying, look, I would like to be an institution that contribute to, reduction of greenhouse gas emission while ensuring social inclusion. Yeah, so that's my vision. And then I start put out a strategy for that, etc. And then you move forward. That's one thing. The other way, in which the pragmatic one, the one I will advise in particular to everyone starting, you start from the identification. Yeah, you start from the identification. So of course you need to have a framework to identify that correctly. Yeah, that's what a minimum level of strategy is needed. So what is the framework? What is the thing you define as green are? So you need to have something pretty light there, but you need to have him. If not, your identification will not be right. And then according to identification, yeah, then you identify, then you refine your strategy in function of identification, and then you move forward into the management and product and service. That it means you know, within here you say within plan, so you can probably start from B and then go to A and then move forward to do afterward. Yeah, that's the other approach. It depends how you are set up, the experience you have, and if you're accompanied or not. Does it answer?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Davide.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, if you have no question, let's get into the core of the session of today. So we speak about managing environmental risk and opportunities. So as for the other time, you will find it here into these links. My colleagues are gonna gonna share with you these links into the chat. So some of the best practices you may find into the management of risk and opportunity could be found into the Green Map. Green Map is a work I've been doing with the European Microfinance Platform, with the Green and Climate Finance Action Group, with the support of the Luxembourg Ministry. And we have designed, thanks to the digital support of EDERA Solution, a map of good practices worldwide. You can click and filter them to your needs. One other thing we've been doing with this work, same resources, same actor, we've been designing a set of manuals and case studies where we present the best practices and organize in terms of essential practices and standard. For example, today when we'll discuss about best practices into management of risk and opportunity, we build our speech around 4 case studies that are there online. The first 2 in terms of managing indirect risk and opportunity, with example from Korea, from Senegal, and Muktinakt Bikas in Nepal. And when we're going to speak about then afterward in terms of managing of direct risk and opportunity, we will build up on case studies. You can find them online, all, for example, from Bank Fondesa from Dominican Republic and Renaka from Benin. So, of course, this is like a selection. These institutions are doing other things, and many other institutions are doing things, but that's, to help you with focusing certain key aspects onto the dimension and essential practice you may want to look. These cases are reported into the action group in 3 languages, so you can find them there. Also, let's not forget that we have an online training. This online training is composed of various sessions and various modules, and you have module 3 and module 4. They're fully available online, designed by us and delivered to you for free. Where here into this training, you will have quite some material in terms of managing the vulnerability, managing the impact, and managing the opportunity. Distribute onto module 2 and module 3. You have a short video explaining what it is, and then you have an extensive documentation with all details you may be interested to. Okay, so maybe before going into this, so someone of you would maybe want to take a microphone and tell us what do you think that means direct and indirect risk and opportunity, and what does it mean manage this risk and opportunity? Please write down the chat or take the microphone, my preferred option, and let us know what is your view, your experience you may have into these 2 questions. So what it means direct and indirect risk and opportunity, what it means managing the risk and opportunity. Please, your floor. Don't be shy. Indirect beneficiary, direct employee. Super. Good. Then, okay, we have a raised hand, a hand raised. Guzman, please.
Yes. Oh, well, I think it's already been answered, but basically, managing direct and indirect risk. Direct risk refers to the risks that are being basically internally generated internally by the institution, including their staff activities and things like that, and indirectly comes through their portfolio. That's basically their client.
And what it means actually managing. So what would you define as managing a risk, for example?
I would define it as finding potential ways to do things without basically harming the environment. So, for example, operationally, maybe cutting down or using alternative sources of energy, or managing water use type of thing, and indirectly, um, perhaps creating awareness. I mean, whatever it is you need to do to create the awareness among your clientele or to provide products or services that would allow them to be more sustainable.
Thank you. And this is a right approach, but on one of the dimensions. That means it is the approach on the environmental impact. So you say, okay, I want to look inside what is the impact my institution has, direct, and it may have through their client, indirect, in terms of environmental degradation. Are my client or my institution, consuming too much paper and water, etc., emitting too much pollutant into the air, soil, and water, etc., etc. And then, if that's the case, how do we organize my processes and products to reduce that? What about the other two dimensions, so vulnerability and demand and needs for green solutions? Yeah, Usman, it's very active today. Usman, please go ahead.
I was actually bringing down my hand, Davide.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead. You or someone
I was leaving the floor to someone else. Yes, I was bringing down the hand.
No worry, people can book themselves. Anyone else want to add? Please don't be shy. We learn from what you share with us. And the more we share with us, the more we can adapt to your doubt and try to solve them. Yeah? So please go ahead. What is missing? Anyone? Osman, if you want to add, I don't see any other any other hands raised. Okay. What's the question again? The question is manage risk and opportunity. What you explain us has to do with managing the direct and indirect impact on the environment. I just go back. It's very important that our management cover these three dimensions. We were discussed with your example. You're managing the adverse impact of the client and the institution, but also you want to manage these other two dimensions. You want to manage the vulnerability of the institution and the clients. You want to manage the economic opportunities that your institution and your client may have. Any ideas? Okay, if no direct ideas, I can move it forward. So let me get into this standard and then we can reopen the discussion. So the standard 2, manage of environmental risk and opportunity, it is about what? It is about the processes and tools that are in place to analyze and respond. Yeah, that's important. You want to, first of all, analyze and respond. Before you analyze, then you respond. You don't just take it what you identified for granted. You want to analyze that, prioritize it, understand the level of impact this vulnerability and environmental impact may have on your institution. So it is about the process and tool in place to analyze and then respond to what? To the three key items: vulnerability, negative environmental impacts, client demand and needs identified into the standard 1. Yeah, this is very important. So in the standard 1, you identify the vulnerability, you identify the environmental impact, you identify the demand and needs of your client for green transition, and here you look into the processes and tools that are in place to analyze to respond to those. It is about how the institution translates, and this word translate is very important, how you translate vulnerability, negative environmental impact, demand and needs into data, risk and opportunity. As said, if you don't make them a risk and opportunity, what you identify in the standard one, you will then not manage them correctly, or you will give them a secondary role. So let's look into what it means. Okay, so let's see in detail. Okay, sit down, fasten your seatbelt, and let's take a journey with us into the management of indirect risk and opportunity. We start with indirect risk and opportunity. Why? Because as you know, what the client does is basically 90% of what you will be affected to, and what could be a key element of risk of your institution. And then we do a bit faster the part on the direct risk and opportunity. So the essential practice one of the standard two, so management of indirect risk and opportunities, it tells us about the indirect risk and opportunities. So the first indicator speak about the institution, if the institution incorporate into its financial risk, and here the secret word is financial risk, the key word, yeah, management policies and processes identify vulnerability of the client portfolio. What does it mean? The first indicator, check if for the specific case of vulnerability, not for the impact, but for the vulnerability, yeah, your institution is able to translate this vulnerability into a financial risk, and it include that into the processes and policy. What does it mean? If I am identifying, the vulnerability of clients to droughts, for example, and you do by having a specific indicator, specific tools, etc., and you say, look, 50% of my clients are highly vulnerable to droughts, 30% medium vulnerable to drought, and 20% weakly vulnerable to droughts. Then what you want to know is this droughts, if it happens, yeah, will affect my clients, and if it will affect my clients because they are vulnerable, to which extent are they going to affect them? So it will be 80% of the loss of production, it will be 20%. And if that happens, how much is going to affect my risk as an institution? Will that translate into, into a credit risk? Yeah, so that basically client will start not repaying, or will be translated into an operational risk and going to disrupt certain of my operation, etc. So this is key. So that means that is the vulnerability of the client may have an impact on the financial risk of my institution. And if that's the case, I need to translate it into my policy and process to say, what should I do? Yeah, this is the key indicator. The institution then recognizes the identified vulnerability of the client as a factor of risk to achieve its social mission and environmental objective, and there's a process in place to manage it. So pay a lot of attention. The indicator 1 and 2 are similar but very different. So they both have to do with vulnerability, but the first one is looking into the fact that if the institution translates this vulnerability into a financial risk, yeah. The second one is if this institution translates the vulnerability into a social risk. Yeah. So the two things could be related, but could also be different. Let me make the example again about the drought. Yeah. Okay. So there is this drought. The client are eventually losing part of their production, but I know that they will keep on, paying the bill, and will keep on repaying me. So that will not gonna come back into a financial risk for me. Nevertheless, this clearly will become an impact on the social mission, because my client, even if still being able to pay me back, so not generate a financial risk, that instead, of course, will make them more and more vulnerable and more and more and less capitalized. So that basically is putting at stake the social mission of the institution, and instead is to build resiliency of your clients, that is to include them into the financial sector. But the client that is more vulnerable will be more complicated to then include them in the second round of credit, for example. Yeah. So the institution could translate the vulnerability into a financial risk or into a social and environmental risk. Yeah. This distinction is the one the two indicator makes. Yeah. And then the indicator 3 is about, okay, what's up then after that? So institution incorporate, identify client vulnerability into this risk management process, thanks to what? We will see in a second when we look into the act against 3.0. You have specific indicators to do so. You generate specific score. You categorize each client in function of the vulnerability layer and how that could impact financially or non-financial institution. Do you define level of risk acceptance? So what is your appetite of risk? Do you don't want to have more than 50% of the client with medium level of risk? Do you propose specific financial, non-financial products in function of the risk your client could be affected due to their vulnerability? Do you raise awareness of your institution in terms of, of your client in terms of their actual vulnerability to certain specific climate or other environmental threats? All that has to do with basically the management of the risk that derive from the vulnerability, okay? And then you have a quantitative indicator where you actually check, let's go back with the concept of outreach, how much this has been done. So number of loan with vulnerability assessment, so many of the loan you disburse as a vulnerability assessment, volume of loan vulnerability assessment, percent of the volume with vulnerability assessment of your portfolio, number of loan in the portfolio that at least last year financial and non-financial product aim to compensate for the client vulnerability. So you identify vulnerability, for example, let's come back to the droughts, okay? So then one of the policy will be raise the awareness of the client to this problem and then eventually include them into a program you may manage in terms of access to irrigation, for example. And then for the client that has a higher level of vulnerability like to droughts, you will normally advise or you will discuss with them on the opportunity to actually get finance, something that's related to, for example, drought resiliencies or drip irrigation and other things, okay? If you understood that, then the other dimension here are relatively straightforward because the other indicator, because it is actually the same approach, but now with the impact. Yeah. So I remind you that we did all these 3 indicators with the topic of vulnerability. So is your client vulnerable? If then, are you translating that into financial risk into policy and processes? If it's not translated into financial risk, it's translated into a social risk. Or an environmental risk, I just said, a non-financial risk, and indicator 3 is about how do you actually do it, indicators, call, threshold, etc. And then the green index actually do the same assessment, but now with the dimension of environmental impact. So now we're speaking about the institution incorporate, identify adverse environmental impact of the client or the portfolio level into the credit risk. Yeah. So now it's no more if you're vulnerable, but it's their impact. So is the impact of the client on the environment actually generating a financial risk? I make an example again in agriculture if you want. So if you're financing a smallholder that are cutting trees, that clearly will have an impact on the biodiversity, will have an impact on the ecosystem. It could translate or not into the financial risk. For example, you cutting trees that are feeding, nutrient into the soil, yeah, that are, for example, decreasing the level of, exposure to temperature shocks on the soil of your land, and then as by destroying the ecosystem, the client has a risk on themselves because it will have a risk to decrease their productivity. Yeah, and so that can translate similarly into a financial risk for your institution. And the indicator 5 is about if the recognized identified adverse environmental impact they recognize as a factor of risk into the achievement of the social mission and environmental objectives. As said, could maybe not translate, into a financial risk, but financing clients with their main work, for example, will be, degrading the ecosystem or will imply degradation of the ecosystem that could impact your social and environmental objective. So similar to the previous one, when we spoke about vulnerability, now we speak about adverse environmental impact. And then below, the indicator GI 2.1.6 similarly works, is telling you, okay, how do you do what you claim to do? So your institution incorporate Identify adverse environmental impact. Now the adverse environmental impact into its risk thanks to what? So now you have specific indicator and score for the adverse environmental impact. You have an exclusion list, things that are too dangerous for the environment, you just don't finance. You categorize the client in terms of their impact to the ecosystem. You define the level of risk acceptance. Do you propose specific financial and non-financial products, etc., etc. So it's very similar to the other indicator, but now focus into the environmental impact. Now, quantitative indicator, I'm not going to go through in detail, but it's basically same setup as for vulnerability, now for a specific topic of environmental impact. How much do you do on the 3 qualitative indicator on the left for your client? So how many number of the loan application are rejected due to adverse environmental impact, how many number of loan with environmental impact are assessed, etc., etc. If we move forward to the third part, now here we are about the managing of the opportunity. Now, the first two was managing of the risk. This one, managing of the vulnerability. This one, managing of the environmental impact. And here we're speaking about managing of the opportunity. So now, the institution identify green practice and technology that create benefit for the client. So in the standard one was an identification. Now, do we actually understand which one of these technologies and green practices actually generate benefit for the client in terms of health, in terms of social well-being, in terms of revenue? So again, it's a word of translation. How this green practice and technology the client may have needs of for business purposes or for household that can generate actual benefit for the client. Can be health benefit, can be really economic benefit, can be social benefits, can be educational benefits. My children can study for longer if they have access to the light, etc. The institution ensure that the practices of technology identified are recognized as green by an environmental taxonomy and or complying with clear environmental criteria. What does it mean, the indicator 8? This is key for the opportunity management. Is very important. You need to define, because you look to an international standard, or because you have in place a regulation in your own country, or because there are framework that your institution and countries suggest to, or because you internally you have designed this framework, you need to define what is green. Yeah, because if you don't define what is green, everything could get into the pocket. So then you need to define what is green. Yeah, and means any institution who want to move forward to green inclusive finance need to say this activity, these practices are green. And you need to have a correct framework for that. Yeah. So which of the activity contribute to reduce vulnerability? Which of the activity contribute to decrease impact environmental impact? For example, you can list them. Say agroforestry, solar panel, electric vehicle, etc. And to create this taxonomy, typically there is a key approach. You want to identify at least one dimension for which this practice and technology provide an important contribution. Like for example, if you think about solar panel, you are strongly significantly contribute to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. But that will not be enough. You also want to ensure that what is defined as green do not significantly harm other objectives you may have. Let me make an example. If you now go with the solar panel example as before, and you can argue, yeah, that clearly is reducing, air pollution, is reducing greenhouse gas emission, etc. But you did not identify a clear chain on how to, build, assembly this panel, and then what happened after their use. So what's the disposal after their use? Or do you have a chain of recycle? Do you have a collector, etc., etc., or they're just throw on the land? This will not classify as green, because you will decrease greenhouse gas emission, but you will contribute to the soil pollution, for example. Yeah, so that is key. So you need to have your own taxonomy. What is green need to be defined. The indicator 9 is institution recognize, identify demand and needs of the green practice and technologies, economic opportunity, and incorporate them into the credit process and manual and the client segmentation. So this is basically the equivalent of the first indicator we discussed in terms of risk management for vulnerability and adverse environmental impact. And what it's saying is that it's not enough that you find opportunities, think you may finance, you define what is green, to actually have a coherent opportunity management. but you also need to be able to translate this identified demand and needs into an actual economic opportunity. What does it mean, economic opportunity? Is that if you will finance those, your client and or your institution will increase their revenue. Yeah. And if that's the case, then these need to be reported into the credit processing manual, means which kind of credit will I provide to which scope, to which kind of clients. And I define the segment of clients that's need to be attended by these specific credits and approach to ensure that they can be better off after they've been financed according to their needs. And then the indicator, the last indicator there is written 11, but should be 10, is the institution has in place a process to select and propose specific financial and non-financial products and services aiming to address identified or demand of each client. What does it mean that? It means that you can have an identification of what could be good for your client, but then you need to define which tool, which practice, which technology will fulfill the needs. That I think is very important. So it's not because you identified, there is a need of green and then anything green will fit. Then the point is, do you have a process in place that define that kind of financial and non-financial support the client may have and receive in function of their level of demand and in function of their level of return for each one of the green practice and technology they may implement. Okay, so let's get into example. So managing direct risk and opportunity. Let's see some good example from Cori Microfinance, Senegal, institution in Senegal. So Cori assesses customer vulnerability to weather threats like climate change, environmental degradation, loss of biodiversity, and the difficulty to access energy, and integrate this information into credit processes, particularly for agricultural activity. We have a risk mapping defining climate risk and their probability of occurrence, as well as customer degrees of exposure. So it depends where are they, what kind of threat they could be affected to, and if it happens, how much they're exposed to it. Korea as a tool to manage climate change and ecosystem risk, including exposure limits by sector. So for each sector, what is the level of exposure you will allow to? Loss provision, yeah. So you will put provision in case of events having to do with climate events. Adaptation of maturity according to the product cycle. Introduction of loan product design to support farmer adaptation using nature-based solutions. So for example, we identify a set of nature-based solutions. We will discuss about that in the next session, what they are, what is the benefit, etc. Like drip irrigation, improved farming techniques like crop diversification and rotation, organic fertilizer, biodigesters, solar equipment, etc. that should respond to the demand and needs of the client. Cori Microfinance uses an enabler digitalization of their loan granting processes together with the company Yapu Solutions. So they have recognized that to manage all this information, we need to have access to specialized digital and data management. And with that, they collect the consumer geolocalization that allow them to improve the assessment of the exposure of the various threats, as well as they have, questionnaire online designed by Renew entity that allow to assess the vulnerability of the clients as well as the environmental risk of each client. Voila. So that's one thing. Another example we may see in terms of management is Muktina Bikas Bank in Nepal. So Muktina Bikas banks use environmental and social risk management guidelines in terms of policy, processes, and tools, identification, assessment, and management of environmental and social risk, as well as decision-making processes. This thing is very important. You don't only want to, to identify, categorize, etc. You need to provide guidance to the loan officer and manager okay, what should you do according to the level of risk you've been identified? Yeah, what are the actions? And that's key. Do you need to don't grant the credit? Do you need to grant the credit but according to certain conditions? You need to adapt the condition of credit? Do you need to target the scope of the credit, etc., etc.? You need to accompany the credit with some non-financial support to make it, less vulnerable, and of course, documentation and record keeping requirement. Muktina Bat implement the environmental and social risk management guidelines by screening transaction, environmental due diligence, categorization of transaction based on environmental and social risk, decision-making processes, monitor client environmental performance, management of a client non-compliance with environmental standard, monitor environmental risk analysis at headquarters and branches, so the two sides, and staff awareness raising. That is key, because if your staff is not aware or not trained, then it will eventually not implement this management correctly. It identified the opportunity to develop and implement green practices and services, thanks in partnership with either sustainable solutions, so that it allowed to identify what opportunity you may have to finance, like access to clean water or energy. Research with Impact R project framework, where identify a certain set of practices and technology that can help the green transition. Use as a multi-tier framework for energy access. So you really see quite some specific names. Now, maybe some of them you may know. You can look into the case study to know more about that. But what is important, you see, that in this first bullet point were mentioned tools and framework that is used to identify and manage this opportunity. Yeah, and that is key, because it's what will give you the enabler to achieve your objective. Identification. So use the initiative joint monitoring program for WASH. Use FAO food and security experience scale for food security. So we define the clear framework for the scope, food security, energy access, and WASH in terms of key opportunity identification and management. And then we identify clients' needs and prioritization of action. Prioritization is key. You are not able to do everything at once. You need to define what to do first and what to do next, and eventually what not to do. So I move forward then into the management of the direct risk and opportunities. This is the other side of the coin. That will be much faster. But let's not forget that in terms of risk management, as well as the identification of the direct and indirect. And if you focus into the indirect, this is what you aim to do, is how do you reduce the ecological footprint and the vulnerability of your institution that you identified before, and eventually how do you capitalize on the opportunity you may have identified before for your institution to move into green action. So let's see. The institution has a contingency plan and the budget in place to mitigate the risk resulting from the effect of climate change. So if something happens, do you have a contingency plan? Do you know what to do, how to do, as well as a budget to do what you aim to do? This is the key things to be able to manage your risk. The institution avoids, minimize, and/or offset the adverse impact of its internal activity, headquarter, branch level on the environment. This is on the headquarters. So, for example, you say, okay, no more printing paper, yeah, no more plastic bag, etc., or no more than this amount. The institution raised staff awareness on the adverse environmental impact of their activity, vulnerability to climate change, institutional properties, and trained the employee on good practices to reduce the institution's own environmental impact on the environment. So this is about awareness of the staff. The indicator 4 is if it is certified by someone as being a green institution in terms of requirement, of green building, certified by, international norms like ISO. The institution purchases certified carbon credit and reporting period. The institution manages its own identified opportunity. This is an important one. Let's not underestimate the indicator 6. Why is it important? Because once you identify a certain opportunity, do you manage them? So it means the institution manages its own identified opportunity to develop and implement environmental strategy, environmental or climate risk and management system, green product service. It means I'm identified that if I will have better access, for example, to lending with better condition. Now, I have a plan. I have a plan in place on how to do that. So, which are the stakeholders to contact? What are the things to improve so that we can actually grab this opportunity? That's very important because a specific line of credit with defined target into green, etc., are building up that allow decrease, of course, on interest rate, for example, for refinancing your institution. So that could be one of the objectives you may have, or could be if I do that, I will have access to some technical assistance support that eventually will support my improvement in terms of also other aspects key for my activities. And then, of course, here, indicator the quantitative one, so number of staff who received information on environmental footprint, etc., number of staff who receive information on strategy to reduce the institutional environmental footprint, and number of staff that implemented or participated in activity reducing the environmental footprint. Yeah? So if you want to see some example, so managing direct risk and opportunity. Example from Banfondesa from Dominican Republic. So Banfondesa has identified opportunity to work toward reducing energy consumption in its branches network. Yeah, so it invests 230,000 US dollar. That was the target when we collect the information of 33 in energy conversion of branches. Majority of the 61 branches operating with energy efficiency and clean energy was an objective of the case study done, and implements into their institution the 3R approach. That means reuse, reduce, and recycle. Identification of multilateral investment bank and impact fund with real interest in green inclusive finance, as just said, is just not only I could get better off, but how do I manage this possible economic advantage I may have if I invest into green? Ongoing monitoring and relevant regulation of taxonomy, strategic partners with European Investment Bank in implementation of the green inclusive finance agenda, support the EIB network to develop internal technical capacity to meet the challenge imposed by implementing green, circular and blue finance. Yeah, you need to do it. You need to, increase your capacity. If you see other example from Renaka, now in Benin, the institution is reducing its direct environmental footprint thanks to the headquarters that are equipped with solar panel since 2016 with 20 kilowatt capacity, reduction of electricity cost. So you see these are co-benefit. Yeah, you manage your impact you may have on the environment, and also you pay a lower bill. 5 rural agencies are equipped with solar panel and access to electricity. So that's the other key additional benefit. It's not just reducing the cost, because these branches may have not had access to electricity before. So with the solar panel, they also have access to electricity. And then they own a fund for institution energy efficiency and clean energy for investment forecasted to happen in the next 10 years. They have ongoing saving electricity bill that go up to 20%. Voila. So before going into the standard 2 in the remaining 15 minutes and guide you through, if you will then would like to kindly fill this part of the assessment, I stop a second. Do you have question, critics, comment, or suggestion of input? Please. You can write in the chat, you can raise your hand, and we give you the microphone. Yeah, here, Cinzia, thanks a lot for telling us there is a green taxonomy which defines what is green. For example, the European green taxonomy. Some countries like Ghana have their own green taxonomy, and that should be used in the institution in defining what is green. Yes, exactly. So, of course, if you have a green taxonomy in your country, that's your reference, because also will become a regulation that you need to report to. If you don't have it, then you can get expired to the nearby country that has one, or the international one, as mentioned, like European taxonomy, as well as if they're not tailored to your needs, then you need to do a small internal exercise to then define from by yourself how to adapt it for internal processes, if that's not mandatory yet for you. Yeah, that is okay. Define each institution, what is green and what is not. I think yes, you need to have a common reference. I fully agree. But on the other side, let's not overestimate the fact that a global definition will not fit the purposes of everyone, and in particular, many times these overall definitions are not tailored for micro enterprise, smallholder, poor household, etc. There is always a work that has to do with your own knowledge on how to actually operationalize what is defined as green. This is key. Yeah, because very often when you start defining formally what it is, you're more on large corporate, country level, etc. And what you want to make as a work, you want to make that work for your own target clients. So in any case, yes, there is a bit blurry line, but this is where your expertise and knowledge, together maybe with some expert, really come into the play, where you can actually make this stuff meaningful for your own clients. Is there any chance that going greener will bring down the competitivity of the performance of the company? Seemingly, it pays to opt for green strategy. Yeah, things can happen. That's clear. So to go green, you need to invest. Nevertheless, the clear approach that I think I will advise any institution to take to avoid this potential risk is to start green by thinking about how going green will reduce the vulnerability of your client and will increase your capacity to achieve your social goals. If you take this as a starting point, it is very, very unlikely what you are reporting there, so decreasing in competitivity, because once you're basically fostering your two key objectives you may have, that is, one is financially sustainable under the new scenario of climate change. So you need to reduce the vulnerability to climate and environmental degradations, and you need to do in a way in which that will fulfill the needs of your clients. Yeah, so that's a point toward where do I start. We will not discuss too much into this training about that, but it's a key things. I have many things I can do. Where do I start? Where do I start so that I maximize the positive result of my implementation of my green strategy, and then minimize what could be possible drawback. Because of course, everyone need to increase part of the time to do things, the investment to be done. You need to learn new things. This is not so much about green. It's about innovation. Every time you do something new, you have a cost of innovation that has to do with the actual financial cost, but also has to do with the risk that the innovation you may take is not the best one. So that's also why it's always advised to have a step-by-step approach and starting with what is called quick wins. Things that you can forecast, and in 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months will generate possible good benefits with minimum work. And then from there you learn so that you're able to adapt while you do. Okay, so with that, because we have the last 10 minutes to go, I will strongly advise to take the link that will be shared with you into the chat and have a look into the assessment you maybe want to fill. So the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group has developed the Green Industry 3.0. As well, we have been co-design the digital solution that then has been programmed and write into code by the IT IT partner of the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group, namely Edera Solution, and is offered to you, every one of you, free of charge, directly on the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group. You can click to this link and you may have access to material, but also you may have access to the actual Green Industry 3.0 in this full power. Yeah. Now, what we're going to do now is not this one. What we're going to do is, okay, yeah, sorry. If you click into that, this is what you will find. And you will also have, a demo of the result of the green index. So this will be reported in terms of standard scoring, will report in terms of dimension of risk and opportunity. So you can find their material of how your institution may be assessed. Now, for the scope of today, again, Edera Sustainable Solution, again, IT partner of the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Financial Group, the European Microfinance Platform, had designed a specific questionnaire that focuses only on dimension by dimension. And this is the one that will be posted now into your chat. And this is the one we strongly advise you to click on it and eventually undergo an assessment of your own institution. You can do now while we speak, but better you can take some time in the next couple of days to fill it. I remind you that if you will fill it, you will then at the end of the training receive the scoring of your own institution, of your partner institution if you're not a microfinance institution, as well as the benchmark of the performance of the institution against the participant to the training. So while still waiting, let us do it. So I change my screen, I click on the link. Please do the same. Please let me know if you have problem to connect into that one. And I'm gonna share now my other screen and share it with you and take some minutes to guide you through. Do you see my screen? Super. Thank you. So then you are here normally, and you normally end here in the English version. If you, for some reason, you will end somewhere else, just make sure that you change the language. The tool is available in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. So make sure you're on the English version. Then you go next, Then here explain, policy, privacy, etc. You may read it through. There are all the things you may read are here around. And then you can go next. If you go next, if you accept the condition, you go next. And then here you want to fill first and last name. Okay. You want to put your email. You want to put your institution name. You want to put the type of institution you are. Yeah. Okay. You want to put the region of activities where you're active. For us, is in quite some places. Okay, countries if you want to specify, and then you move forward. And then, do you want to provide the comments of to your answer to the green index survey? Yes, you want. So that you're not obliged to, but if you want to provide further detail, you may. And then, very importantly, yes, you want to show me quantitative indicator when available. So then you click into that, and then you're inside the standard 2 of the green index 3.0. So managing of environmental risk and opportunity. Okay, so let's look what is inside. I'm not gonna take in too much time. I'm just gonna guide you through, because the indicator you see here are exactly one-to-one the indicator I just explained you before in the previous hour. What I want to remark is that are just the options, yeah? Because we go here, so the first three indicators, let's remind us, are about vulnerability, yeah? So now the institution incorporate into its financial risk, financial policy, etc. They identify vulnerability. If you say no, is no. If you say yes, then it appears quite a lot of things. What do you, which kind of vulnerability do you incorporate into your financial risk? The weather threats, the energy poverty, the lack of due success organization supply, the environmental degradation. So you need to identify them. Then the institution recognized, identify vulnerability as a factor to achieve a social mission or environmental objective. What we discussed can be no, but if it is yes, again, multiple choice. Which one of the vulnerability are a factor that could impact the social objective, the environmental objective? For example, in this case, we say, weather threats, environmental degradation could be translated into, financial risk. But here instead, you will say, okay, good. Poor waste management, yeah, that I don't see as a translated into a financial risk, but poor waste management could be, for example, a social impact, health diseases, etc. So you could have overlap, yeah. For example, environmental degradation as well. You can click it here, but that will allow us to differentiate which one of the environmental threats related to vulnerability that are identified and included to policy and processes in terms of financial risk, first indicator, and in terms of social and environmental risk. Then institution incorporate identify client vulnerability into its risk management processes. If it is yes, if it is no, it's not. You just identify blah, 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 but you don't have any specificity. You just click no. But if instead you have it, then you're asking thanks to what? You include vulnerability indicators, as we discussed. You include scores to evaluate your clients. So the first one is about vulnerability. Yeah. So a vulnerability indicator to weather, event, etc. into the client assessment and portfolio. The second one, you generate scores. The third one is about you categorize clients, according to their level of vulnerability. You define level of risk of acceptance for each client. As discussed, you select and propose client to specific loan. So you see here that is clearly make fully clear, I think, how the Green 3.0 is called to be also a training tool, because here it gives you a list of things you may do to actually manage your financial or non-financial risk coming from vulnerability. So you can just read them through, see what are you actually doing, and then also thinking what you could do that you may be not doing yet. Yeah. So for example, me and defining level of risk acceptance, selection of proposal of its client to specific loan product according to the vulnerability, etc. Yeah. Environmental clause into the loan contract, condition for renewal if you have too high vulnerability, etc. Now, if I want to provide a quantitative indicator, I click here. And then here is basically the quantitative indicator I explained before. So you say, you do what you claim here. How much do you do it? Yeah. So here you can provide the number of loan vulnerability assessment, etc., etc. Then the other one here, the other group of three questions is the one I explained before. Now the other thing we want to check through is that once you have translate now environmental impact into the actual financial risk or non-financial risk, Then in financial risk, you say, okay, which one of the environmental impact are a financial risk for you? The greenhouse gas emission, for example, you may not have certain financing, if these are too high. Soil pollution may affect the production of your client, etc. Which one here? If you don't translate this environmental impact into actual non-financial risk and actually social environmental risk, you just click no. If you do, again, which one of those are social or financial risk? You see, so now deforestation, land degradation, and you just click which one of these impact become or are considered as social and financial risk. And here below, I'm not going to go through in detail, the same. If you do so, how do you do it? Bam, full list. Inclusion now, this is the equivalent one of the GI tree, but now specifically for the environmental impact. Yeah, you have an adverse environmental impact indicator that are included with your loan. You have an exclusion list. You have a guideline for environmental and social risk management, etc., etc. These are the things we just went through before for the vulnerability, and now a specific for the environmental risk. You, like, for example, select and propose the client-specific loan product. So we invite you to read and think carefully and see what you do and what you may do. Similar, if you answer to certain yes above, you can maybe click here and provide your information in terms of quantitative indicator. The institution identify now the opportunity, green practices and technology to create benefit for the client, at least for the following way. It can improve affordable, reliable energy, clean energy. It can improve access to clean water. It can improve productivity and revenue. It can increase efficiency in production. It can reduce adverse environmental impact. It can reduce adverse impact on health. You see, all the possible benefit may have to implement and foster some green practices and technology. The institution ensure that these green practice and technology are part of an environmental technology. Taxonomy, no. Yes, what we discussed, or yes. The institution recognize, identify demand and needs of the client as an opportunity, partially. The institution has in place a process to select the proposed specific financial and non-financial product and services aimed to address identified needs and demand. Yeah. If you do that, you will finish to fulfill the management of the indirect risk, and then you can move forward to the second part, the essential practices for the management of direct environmental risk and opportunity. So the first one is what we discussed. Institution has a contingency plan and the budget. If it's yes, yes, what is covering? It's covering its own property and its quarter, it's covering its branches, it's covering its own human resources at that quarter, it's covering human resources at its branches, for example. The institution avoid, minimize, and offset the adverse impact of its internal activity in headquarter and branch level on the environment. If you don't do, you don't do. If you do, it's telling you, okay, what? We see example, use and manage energy sources for your own institution now. You waste recycle in your own headquarter and branches. You reduce electricity consumption. These are all the kind of things you may be interested to. And if you don't find what you do or what you're doing, you just always click other and you can then specify what you do. The institution raise awareness, raise staff awareness on the adverse environmental impact of their activity, on the vulnerability of the and climate change of institution and properties, yeah, or none of the above. The institution train its employees on good practices to reduce institutional own adverse environmental impact and generate positive environmental impact, implement contingency plan, offset unavoidable negative environmental impact, etc. How do you do it? It's asking you to do through trainings. Once at recruitment, you do communication material, participate to events, ongoing training, etc. Again, you see here is also training purposes. So you see how would you be able to do or could you do? If you want to provide some further detail, here are the quantitative indicator, number of staff members who receive this information, etc. The institution is certified to meet requirement for accredited green building. Yes, no, partially. The institution purchase carbon credits. No. For example, the institution manages its own identified opportunity to develop and implement environmental strategy, environmental risk, etc. So do you understood this is an opportunity for you? Are you like managing that? Yes, for an environmental strategy, for a green product and services, by doing what? By having one or more staff with part of his time dedicated to to, for example, explore grants and technical assistance opportunity, explore forthcoming regulation law and standard. So this is really assessing what are you actually doing in terms of managing this potential identified opportunity, develop found request, etc. So all the things you may have people dedicated to improve the likelihood that you will have access to better condition, or having partnership with expert company or individual that can provide the services. Yeah, so this could be done internally or externally. Voila, once you finish, you want then to submit. You remember that you want to write these things down, right? This is your submission. For me, it's just a try by Davide during the training, GE 2.0. Okay, and then you submit. You need to see this stuff. Successful submission. Thank you for participating. When you see that, it means you did it, and we receive the information, and we'll be able to collect, retrieve them, etc., and come back to you with your own scoring and the score compared to the benchmark. So we come to the end. Before closing, we still have two things to be done. One, do you have questions? If you have question or feedback, please raise your hand. Please write in the chat. Give you some minutes, some seconds if someone want to react. Of course, for any question here, sorry, here we have the old email, probably my fault. So I think maybe Ligia, you can put the email to reach you into the chat, because we still have the old email here. So you can reach out e-MFP coordinator of the action group, Ligia, directly by the email she's gonna post. And if not, let's take please 2 minutes with 2 questions. Yeah, please try the tool. Yeah, this is the right email. And I will meet you next week with the last session of training about green products. So you probably very much are looking forward for that. But before going to that, please kindly just fulfill this quiz. We have just 2 questions. One is where your learning expectation met during this session. If 1 is not at all, if 5 totally good, and then in the 3 is almost so, 4 pretty good, and 2 it could be better, but I got something. Yeah, and if you want topic you would like to explore further, please kindly write there an open text on what you would like to explore further, so that we can eventually look into that for the next session, or even better, toward thinking further training and support to your institution. So please take some few minutes to answer, and then we meet among us in 1 week or so. Thanks to you all. In the meantime, I'm very happy to thank you. You will receive the package of this info, of this presentation, as well as you receive the video. We hope you enjoyed it. This is just the beginning of the journey. Please come back with suggestion, improvement, as well as think you want to know more, or think as you do that could be aligned or not to what we discussed, so that we can actually work together. We learn from your action, as well as we improve from the activity you may like to do or you're already doing. So thank you a lot. Thank you to everyone. See you next week.